Hey, if you're a fan of Randy Rhoads or Quiet Riot, I think you're going to really like what I've got here for you today. I found this newspaper article from November 9th of 1983, and what this is basically an interview with Kevin DuBrow where he talks about what it was like when he first met Randy Rhoads, and then when they were in Quiet Riot together and then leaving. And anyway, just kind of tells the history. It's not very long, but it's really interesting listening to Kevin's own words what happened and what that relationship was like. Now, just to put this in context, the album that really put Quiet Riot on the map in the world is this album right here, Metal Health. And everybody's heard something off of here, especially the song Come On Feel the Noise, which was a huge hit. And also Metal Health the song itself was actually a pretty big hit too. But this was released in February of 1983. And they just became this massive, massive band at that point. But what a lot of people didn't realize at the time was that Quiet Riot had existed for quite a while before that, and they'd actually put out 2 albums. And Randy Rhoads, who most of us were introduced to Randy Rhoads when he joined Ozzy. He was in Blizzard of Oz. He was on that first album. And he was actually in those first 2 Ozzy albums, Blizzard of Oz and Diary of a Madman. And he had actually left Quiet Riot to be in that band with Ozzy. And then it was later that this album got put out, and then then Quiet Riot became huge. Anyway, so I'm going to read this to you. And like I said, I think you're going to find this really interesting. So, again, this is from the Flint Journal, November 9th, 1983. And the title of the article is Heavy Hit. Subtitle is Quiet Riot Proves Its Mettle with Tour Hot-Selling Single Album. All right. Hollywood. Quote, "I mean, this guy was weird," said Quiet Riot's Kevin DuBrow, recalling his first meeting with the late guitarist Randy Rhoads in 1975. "I swear he looked like a girl. With that long hair down to his waist, he had this incredibly long thumbnail on his left hand, too. I didn't know what to make of this guy," unquote. Rhoads, killed early last year in a plane crash, was then a 17-year-old Burbank, California guitarist searching for a lead singer for his rock band. He invited DuBrow, then 18, for a tryout. And so, again, also to put this in context, it was March 19th of 1982. While Randy Rhoads was on tour with Ozzy, they were at kind of a stop, and they got in this little private plane. And the private plane, we'll do another video about this sometime because it's kind of a strange story. But the private plane was flying down close to the tour buses, and it clipped one of them, and Randy was on it. It was while they were on one of their stops, and the plane crashed, and then the people that were on the plane died, including Randy. When I first saw him, I didn't think this weird guy would be a good player, said DuBrow, a chatty, boisterous extrovert. I asked him to play, and I was shocked. And if you ever saw any interviews with Kevin DuBrow, I mean, he just was this kind of huge personality, like I said, they're boisterous. Quote, this weird kid was really good. After I heard him play, I was embarrassed to sing for him. DuBrow, who has blossomed into one of the better heavy metal lead singers, was not very good then. I had no experience, just garage stuff, he said, but Randy didn't care. He was a teenage guitarist, and all teenage guitarists care about is playing guitar. He didn't care about singers. He only wanted me to take up time between guitar solos. He wanted someone who could appeal to girls. He also wanted someone who wasn't a pain in the neck. The other singers he tried were ugly and hard to get along with. But I was cute. I looked like Rod Stewart then. I wore my hair long in that rooster cut. So anyway, and Kevin DuBrow, really, when you get right down to it, he ended up he did have a brutal, kind of amazing voice. And anyway, he was actually really, really powerful. The audition led to the formation of the first version of Quiet Riot. 8 years later, a different unit, still led by DuBrow, has suddenly become one of the top heavy metal bands. Its first American album, Metal Health, which is the one that we're talking about here, on CBS Records, is number 2 on the Billboard magazine pop chart, recently crossing the 1 million mark in sales. A single from the album, Come On Feel the Noise, is number 7. And a lot of people kind of credit this album, Metal Health, because it sold so much and because it really did move into the mainstream, as kind of being the first heavy metal album to break into the mainstream. So again, the album was released, just again to put all this in context, on February 28th of 1983. And then, as you recall, they performed in the US Festival on in May of 1983. So this is just a few months later. And that kind of became a really, really big deal for them. So then this is in November, when this is being printed, and at this point, Quiet Riot is just, especially that song, Come On Feel the Noise, is huge. Released early last March, the album's climb to the top was long and slow, but Quiet Riot's rise to national prominence was longer and slower. In the late 70s, the group featuring Rhoads and DuBrow, which some call Quiet Riot 1, became one of the 2 most popular heavy metal bands in Los Angeles. The other was Van Halen. But Van Halen got a record contract in 1978. Quiet Riot was never offered a major American record deal. The best it could do was record 2 albums that were released only in Japan. Those albums were crap, DuBrow insisted. Back then, we were playing this hard, crunching music in person, but then making these wimpy albums. I don't really count those albums as anything significant. Now, interestingly, if you look on I'll show you something on this side of the album. On the 4th song right there, Slick Black Cadillac, that was actually on the second Quiet Riot album. And he says that they sounded wimpy, but I don't know, if you can actually find a recording of that song, that's with Randy Rhoads playing the guitar, from that Quiet Riot #2 album. And I don't know, I think it sounds pretty heavy. It's pretty cool when you listen to that original recording. So anyway, all right, so Quiet Riot was eager to record for an American label, but none was interested. The record companies hated us, DuBrow recalled. We had a reputation for being so pretentious, we'd try any kind of stunt, do anything outrageous to please our audiences. While DuBrow was certain Quiet Riot was good enough to warrant a contract, he did admit the band had flaws. Quote, "Drumming was a big problem," he said. "For years it was lousy. The drumming would make me look bad. The drummer would rush and make me rush, and I'd sound bad. It was the drummer's fault, but people thought it was me." That's pretty funny. Every time somebody says, it was his fault. Anyway, I love stuff like that. Another problem was confusion about musical style. Quote, "We wanted a record deal so badly that we were writing whatever kind of music we thought might get us a deal," he said. "We were dabbling in pop and disco and all sorts of music we shouldn't have been playing. After a while, we didn't know what we were doing. Still, local audiences loved Quiet Riot." Quote, "We were a local phenomenon," DuBrow said. "We were huge, but it was a drag in a way. We'd get all this adoration and then go home and have no money, no record deal, and no real future." Unquote. But discouragement was not the downfall of Quiet Riot 1. It was simply that in 1979, Rhoads was offered a position in Ozzy Osbourne's band, an offer he couldn't refuse. Quote, "Without Randy, there was no Quiet Riot," DuBrow said. "Our bassist, Rudy Sarzo, went with Ozzy too. I was crushed. I had been so dedicated to our band. When people said we'd never make it, that the odds were against us, I wouldn't listen. I thought we could go on forever." For the next 3 years, DuBrow worked in his own local band, DuBrow. That's what he called his band, with former Quiet Riot drummer Frankie Banali as the only constant member. "We were always changing members," DuBrow said. "It was hard to get any continuity." And by the way, Frankie Banali just passed away, I don't know, a year or 2 back. I can't remember what it was, but he was kind of the last holdout from that original Quiet Riot. Record companies ignored this band too. Quote, "It was as bad as it was with Quiet Riot," he lamented. "We didn't want to rehearse because it was too discouraging. We would only rehearse when we had to learn new songs, so we did most of our playing at shows for money. Then, being in the band didn't seem so bad," unquote. One night at a Los Angeles club, producer Spencer Proffer saw the band, liked its work, and eventually arranged a deal with CBS. They decided to switch the name back to Quiet Riot. DuBrow and drummer Benally were the hub of the new Quiet Riot. They hired guitarist Carlos Cavazo, formerly of the group Snow, and rehired bassist Rudy Sarzo, who lost taste for the Ozzy Osbourne band after Rhoads' death. And that's what I was talking about a second ago when Randy Rhoads died from that plane crash. And now something interesting about this album, if you look right here, it said this album is dedicated to the memory of Randy Rhoads. So they actually dedicated this album to Randy, who was really the one that he and Kevin DuBrow had originally started Quiet Riot. Last March, CBS released Quiet Riot's first album, Metal Health. Quote, "We thought no one would play it because it was too heavy metal," DuBrow said. "We felt we had to play live if the record was to have any chance at all," unquote. Touring with Scorpions gave Quiet Riot valuable exposure. So did an appearance at the US Festival. When John Cougar dropped out of the festival, there was room for another band, he said. "It was between us and Scandal. Our manager worked hard to get us that gig. The money we earned allowed us to continue on the road. As we toured, the record did better and better." And by the way, I saw Quiet Riot opening up for the Scorpions this was 1983, and Scorpions were on the Blackout tour, and they were playing, when I saw them, it was at the Balch Fieldhouse in Boulder, Colorado. I'm curious how many of you saw them on that tour and what that was like. Scorpions were awesome. And I actually really liked Quiet Riot back then. I mean, this album, the one you're looking at right here, is the one I bought back in the 80s. And because I really did like their stuff. And this album, again, was just a massive, massive hit. What is it about Metal Health that has made it the year's second most successful heavy metal album, trailing only Def Leppard's blockbuster Pyromania? Quote, "I think it's because we wrote anthems," DuBrow replied. "We did it unintentionally. These are songs kids relate to that stir them up, that get under their skin and won't go away. It's hard to truly explain what an anthem is, but you know one when you hear it. And we have lots of them on this album." Now, of course, the big breakthrough hit on this album, the song right here, "Come On Feel the Noise," isn't even their song. It's an old Slade song that they redid for this album, but that's the one that really, really took off. However, DuBrow, who wrote half the album, candidly admitted these songs are not great. Quote, "There are some real trite lyrics in some places, but the words don't have to be meaningful in this genre. The music is entertainment, escapism. If it gets too deep, the kids won't like it." And that might be, I don't know how I feel about that statement. That might be true in some cases, but when you look at heavy metal that was really kind of taking off at the time, you get into the early days when Bruce Dickinson was the singer for Iron Maiden, those few albums, Number the Beast, Peace of Mind, I mean, those were all the things that were happening right around this time. You can't really say that those didn't have good lyrics. They were meaningful. And there were other bands that had that stuff too that really made a mark. So I don't know. Anyway, just kind of interesting listening to him say that there. DuBrow stressed the importance of catering to tastes of the young heavy metal audience. "We play for those kids," he said. "We give them what they want, what gets them excited. Forget what the critics or anybody else says." Quote, "A lot of heavy metal bands go wrong by playing for themselves. They get uppity and artsy and lose touch with the kids. But we always know who we're playing for. It takes a youthful attitude to do this. I'm 26, but I'm still a kid. I've yet to call myself a man, and I'm not embarrassed to say that. In this band, we're all overage juvenile delinquents." And that is the end of that article. Anyway, it's kind of interesting to find things like that where you get these little glimpses. Again, this was printed in 1983. This is less than a year after this album came out, and to listen to Kevin DuBrow kind of reminiscing a little bit about what it was like in those early days, first meeting Randy Rhoads, what he was like. I mean, this guy was weird. I love finding these little gems, these little interesting things about these relationships and about these stories of these bands when they were first kind of forming. So anyway, I hope you enjoy that kind of stuff. Please, if you're not already, please follow the channel, like the video. We'd love to get your feedback on these things. Did you remember anything about this? Did you see them during any of these concerts, or did you even see Quiet Riot in those early days with Randy Rhoads? That would have been something, to being able to say that you experienced something like that. Anyway, with that, have yourself a fantastic day.